What's happening, Bills Mafia? Ryan Thomas here, back again for another episode of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I'm joined for the second time he's coming back on the show. Kurt Haumesser of Buffalo Rumblings, the latest podcast. Thank you so much for joining.
Hang on. We got some. You were talking about the technical difficulties. We're starting already on the show. You're a little cutting in and out here, but I think I got it. Might just be a little delayed. That's okay. But yeah. I'm doing well, my friend. I appreciate the flexibility here because we're busy people out here, and I'm glad that I can finally join you because I don't remember. It was during the season. I don't remember what game it was, but it was during the season I was last on. So it's good to be back.
It was in the midst of the Buffalo Bills' complete and total turnaround from that Arizona Cardinals loss when they started to just go off on the tangent that they did, finishing the season 13-3. Sorry for the technical difficulties. I've had issues streaming today, and I'm not sure why. It's just one of those things, but good now, right? Good now. You can see me.
I think you're good. I think we're good now.
Good now. Okay. So, the last time you were on the show, Kurt, we were talking about somewhat of the turnaround that we were starting to see. We were actually inching closer, I believe, to the playoffs towards the tail end of the season. We had just won the AFC East, went on that huge run after the Arizona Cardinals Hail Murray defeat. I guess we have to call it that. And a lot has taken place since, obviously. They made it to the AFC title game, came up short against Kansas City, but I want to get your thoughts just on this offseason so far and somewhat recap the offseason, even though it isn't really over yet. We're kind of over the big additions in free agency. The Bills did add Forrest Lamp to a one-year deal today, and I think that's a nice, solid depth piece. But, Kurt, I want your take on what is your favorite Buffalo Bills offseason addition thus far?
That's tough to pick from because it's – going into this offseason, we were all, okay, do you want Matt Milano? Do you want Darrell Williams? Pick your poison, Bills Mafia. And what does Brandon Beane do? Say, don't worry about it, guys. I got it covered. And he brings back everybody. And I love it. I mean, I didn't expect it. Just shows that we really don't know what goes on behind the scenes. And they're the professionals for a reason. But it was probably the biggest addition, but it's still my favorite. I mean, Emmanuel Sanders coming in here. The Bills lose John Brown. It's tough. We love John Brown. Smoke was a big part of the turnaround of this whole franchise, and we'll always love what he did. But Emmanuel Sanders might not necessarily be a huge upgrade over John Brown, but the things that he's going to bring to this locker room, to this organization, the culture that they want to build, he absolutely screams culture. He screams everything that Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott have preached. And it's awesome. I mean, with Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, and Emmanuel Sanders, and a young Gabe Davis on the rise, and Isaiah McKenzie, too. You can't forget about him. This is I would say, the best wide receiver room in the entire league. Some people might argue Emmanuel Sanders is old. He's on the other side of 30. He's still one of the pure best route runners in the entire NFL. And with him and Stephon Diggs and Cole Beasley, those are three of the best route runners in this league, and I cannot wait to see him working with Josh Allen this year.
Especially when we talk about the pros pro that is Emmanuel Sanders, who he has played with, who he has caught passes from, Big Ben Roethlisberger, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Jimmy Garoppolo. Jury's out on Jimmy G. But I think as a free agent, a pro's pro on the outside looking in, Emmanuel Sanders must have seen something in Josh Allen to make himself say, well, this guy's legit. I got to come to Buffalo, right?
Yeah. And it's cool because, I'm sure you saw in his interview with his introduction interview, he said, I'd go home and I'd just watch Buffalo Bills highlights. When have we ever heard anybody say that? I mean, come on, where are we? But it's awesome. I mean, the league is taking notice. No longer is it, I don't want to play in Buffalo. They got cold weather. They're a bad team. Guys want to come here. Guys want to come here and win championships, and that's exactly what Emmanuel Sanders did. I mean, he has been around the block. He's seen everything. He's got the Super Bowl ring. He's played with some of the greats, and he's coming here, and he's trying to win a Super Bowl for a team that's never done it before, and I think that's awesome.
I love the fact in that introductory press conference, he was asked, what are your goals at this stage of your career? And he said simply, the only goal is to be a small part and being a factor as far as being that first team that wins the Super Bowl here in Buffalo. Like for that to be his goal, that to me was just like, wow, that was, I mean, that was what every Bills fan wanted to hear. And I agree with you as far as your favorite addition, Emmanuel Sanders, you got him in the fold. We didn't even mention the shout out and the praise that Emmanuel Sanders was giving to Gabe Davis along the way of saying, "Oh, I'm watching this Josh Allen highlight reel, but I'm noticing that it's a Gabe Davis highlight reel." How do you think Emmanuel Sanders kind of fits into the fold with second year pro now Gabe Davis, and how do you see Gabe Davis improving upon his rookie season?
I mean, it's cool because Emmanuel Sanders knows he's not. When he entered free agency, he knew he wasn't going to be a number one wide receiver anywhere. He knew that he was going to come in, and he's at the stage of his career where he can mentor guys. And right now, besides maybe a guy like Larry Fitzgerald, I don't know if I can think of a better mentor for Gabe Davis. I mean, Stephon Diggs is great. I mean, they're close-knit, they're fun, they're friendly. But Emmanuel Sanders, like I said, he's seen everything. He's played with everybody. Having him come in and teach him not only just, the skills on the field, but how to be a pro. I mean, Emmanuel Sanders, not that I know of off the top of my head, he's never gotten into trouble. He's always kind of been a pro's pro. He's always been, nose to the grindstone. I'm going to play my ass off and I'm going to win for my team. And that's all you can ask for with a rookie. And I think Gabe Davis is going to feed off of that, especially with the mindset that Stephon Diggs has. This team is really built in a perfect way. We've talked about it really since Brandon Beane stepped in. They're doing the right things. And like I said, I don't think that I can think of a better mentor right now in the league for Gabe Davis than Emmanuel Sanders.
And when have we been at this point in the offseason where we're inching closer to the NFL draft? It's 22 days away. And we really don't have many needs. I mean, I've tried to kind of, pick my brain and see where can we improve. And I mean, there's always room for improvement, but there was always that one guy that we really, really needed. Like heading into 2007, we really needed a running back, Marshawn Lynch. Boom. Obviously the years that they really needed to look at getting a quarterback, they chose, the wrong year a couple times to do that, unfortunately, but with JP and EJ Manuel. But heading into this draft, my biggest question is, what positions do you target? What positions are there to target in the draft, in your humble opinion?
It's a beautiful thing, isn't it, though? We don't have to stress about, we need this position. We need it so badly. I mean, there are positions of need. Like you said, you can always improve. The Kansas City Chiefs needed to improve after they won the Super Bowl, and they didn't get it done. They didn't win a Super Bowl. But there are needs on this team, but they're not glaring needs. You need some more help on the defensive line, whether that be defensive tackle or defensive end. Obviously, I think the easy choice is defensive end. With Starr coming back this year, hopefully that means that Ed Oliver can get it going a little more. And cornerback. The number 2 cornerback behind Trey White is the biggest question. We saw last year, even going into training camp last year, it was, can Levi Wallace be that guy? Or maybe Josh Norman's going to be that guy. Whether they find that number 2 corner in the draft, I don't know. There's still a lot of good names and free agency, so we'll see. Maybe Brandon Beane can pull off some of his magic, but I like this cornerback draft. I like it a lot. It's very, very deep. So that brings up the question. Do you wait until the second round because this draft class is so deep, or do you just strike early, go get a cornerback in the first round and get your guy? I don't know. I don't love this defensive end class. The edge rushers, there's some, there's the top guys. There's a Jalen Phillips, Gregory Rousseau. Behind that, there's a couple nice pieces. I like Ronnie Perkins, but I don't love this edge class, but I do really, really love this cornerback class.
Yeah, and in this league, it's a passing league, and as many, phrases as there are to say, hey, you need a quarterback and you need a guy that can get after the quarterback. Mm-hmm. If your secondary is short up with Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Trey White going into the draft, as well as some of the guys we don't really know about and what they can fully contribute yet to this team. And Dane Jackson and Levi Wallace, I feel, is slowly but surely getting better.
Mm-hmm.
If we add another corner to that mix of guys, it will help our defensive pass rush even more with better pass coverage. That's the way I look at it. So I think that you're right on track. I've talked with so many people in regards to that 30th pick, that first round pick. You got Mel Kiper, Todd McShay. You got all the big time draft analysts saying that they want Buffalo to go out and get a running back. Kurt, I'm pulling my hair, and I'm I don't know how much longer I'm gonna have hair in general, but I'm pulling my hair in terms of not wanting them to take a running back in the first round. Are you with me on that? Do you kind of feel the same way? What are your thoughts on possibly taking a running back in the first round?
I'm with you on that. It's fun. It's sexy. It's, oh my gosh, look at this flashy running back we got. And sometimes it pans out, but a lot of the times it doesn't. I mean, I was just talking about it 20 minutes ago on my podcast with Jared Bailey. Laces out if you want to listen to it. But a lot of these guys that get drafted in the first round, a lot of these guys that get drafted in the first round, the skill position guys, the wide receivers, the tight ends, the running backs, it doesn't pan out a lot of the times. We were talking specifically about wide receivers. We said, when was the last time that we saw a first-round wide receiver pan out to live up to their potential? Maybe Julio Jones. That was probably the last real one. There's been some nice pieces, but to become a superstar, it's not easy. And that's why it scares me, to take a guy like a Travis Etienne or a Najee Harris and say, these guys are for sure hits. They're going to come in. They're going to rush for 2,000 yards and be a great player. That's no guarantee at all. The draft is fun. It's, wow, these guys were great in college. But switching over to the NFL is a lot harder than people think. And it does not translate all the time. I'm not a believer in running back at 30. I don't think the Bills really will. And another thing to remember, too, we don't even know if these guys are going to be there. There's teams ahead of the Bills that could go running back. A team like Pittsburgh comes to mind. I mean, they're losing out on James Conner. They could go with a guy like Najee Harris. The Miami Dolphins could go with a running back. We don't know. I'm crossing my fingers that they're not even there at 30, so we don't even have to have that debate. But no, I'm with you. I don't think running back at 30 is the right move.
I look at who they have: Devin Singletary, Zach Moss, 2 third-round picks in consecutive seasons, and then you bring in a guy like Matt Breida. That's another free agent that they were able to add. I'm not saying Matt Breida is Barry Sanders. I'm not saying Matt Breida is Walter Payton. I'm saying Matt Breida collectively with Devin Singletary and Zach Moss makes their trio, or the position overall, you could say, on that team, on the Bills, much better. I think that in terms of how those players kind of fit stylistically, I think we'd be okay. We're not a running team.
Yeah.
We're a passing team.
Exactly.
So I don't see the rationale behind that. Bill's Twitter is very fickle, as they were today, with Josh Allen's vaccine comments, and I don't even know if I want to get into that whole thing. But
you could spend a whole episode on that. But no, it's the time of the off season when there's really not a lot to talk about, so people just like to talk about whatever. But like you said, I mean, they're really not a run first team. It made sense, back Rex Ryan, ground and pound. We loved to run the ball, but this team is a high-flying, rely on Josh Allen, and I think they can get it done with the running backs that they have. Zach Moss, like you said, they're the perfect trio. Zach Moss is a guy that can get the 2 yards. He can run through you. He's a tough running back. Devin Singletary will make you miss in a phone booth. He doesn't really have that breakaway speed. Matt Breida has the breakaway speed. That's why I think, you can kind of model it off of what the 49ers did a couple of years ago when they made the Super Bowl with Matt Breida, because they had Matt Breida, they had Raheem Mostert, they had Jerick McKinnon. They rode those guys. They said, Jimmy G, throw the ball 8 times in the NFC Championship game. We're just going to run the hell out of the ball. And I think, the Bills could do that, not run the ball like crazy, but they could rely on those 3 to kind of fit their needs perfectly in this offense, but still rely heavily on the pass offense.
Yeah, I think the run game is going to be much more methodical than it was last year, where, let's face it, the run game was pretty much non-existent last year. That's the one thing that we could say. Their offense was fantastic, but wait, they won 13 games without really establishing the run, which is pretty crazy. And I look at it, that's a great comparison in terms of other offenses. with the 49ers, an offense that I look at that's very similar to who we have, and obviously the offensive coordinator spent a lot of time there, Brian Dable, with the New England Patriots. You had Sony Michel, James White, and Rex Burkhead. We'll say Zach Moss is the Rex Burkhead. We'll say Devin Singletary is more of the Sony Michel, and we'll say that James White is more of the Matt Breida, because I do see Matt Breida as that pass-catching type, running back in this offense. So, that's another addition that I really liked. I feel like Matt Breida has been heavily underutilized in Miami and in San Fran.
And I mean, when he was in Miami too, it was, he was brought in after having a few good years with San Francisco, brought into Miami with a team on a quarterback trying to find their way, a team trying to find their identity, pieces moving in and out of the offensive line. It just wasn't a great fit. He comes into Buffalo here. They have a great offense. They have a very good offensive line. He can fit in. He can come in right away and produce. He doesn't have to be relied on to be that number one running back that's going to get 20 touches a game. He'll maybe get 5 to 8 a game. And I think that's the perfect match for Matt Breida. I think that's why he picked Buffalo. It just made sense for him.
Yeah, and another addition that I mentioned at the top of the show when I was having a little bit of the technical difficulties, Forrest Lamp is a guy that I'm shocked that he was even available at this point in the offseason. Former second-round draft choice, played a lot of games, played very effectively in the games that he played in. What was it, like 2 allowed sacks last season on over 1,000 snaps, just ridiculous. Is that really the essence, though, of Brandon Beane? Like, we talk about the big additions like the Emmanuel Sanders of the world and some of the moves that he's made over the last few years, but it seems like these under-the-radar one-year deals are what kind of set Brandon Beane apart and make the Bills that much better of a team with these depth adds kind of late in the free agency process. What do you think of that?
It just speaks to how well run this organization is, because it goes all the way to the scouts. I mean, the scouts find these guys. They say, hey, let's take a chance on a guy like Ty Nsekhe. Maybe he didn't, he wasn't great, but he came in and he produced. He started. He did what he needed to do, and he got a contract with the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, this team is depth heavy. They've said that since the beginning. They want to have depth. They don't want to just rely on the big stars and all their starters. They want to make sure that, if a guy goes down or if a guy's not playing well, we can have 2 guys behind them that can come in, produce, play well, do what they got to do. So a guy like Forrest Lamp, I mean, were the numbers announced yet? I don't think they were. I think it was just a 1-year deal that we know so far.
Yeah, the numbers weren't announced yet. 1-year deal, and ultimately it's a 1-year deal, so it is a prove-it type contract. But I love the fact that they've had multiple moves that are, hey, prove your worth on this team. We'll take you on. We'll see what you're made of. And if you can break the roster, if you can make the 53-man roster and start on this team, then you're going to stay for more than a season. It's just common. It's just fact. So
it speaks to what Brandon Beane wants to do, because he always says, we want to keep our guys. And that's exactly what he did this offseason. He kept his guys, and that's kind of, maybe they didn't draft a guy like Forrest Lamp, but they bring him in, they make him one of their own. He does well, bring him back. I mean, I like what they're doing with this offensive line, because it wasn't just let's re-sign Feliciano, let's re-sign Darrell Williams and keep it at that. Those are going to be our 5 starters. They want to bring in competition. And I said it as soon as John Feliciano's contract got announced. I don't think this means that Feliciano is going to be the for sure starter. I mean, the deal was made so that if they love somebody in this draft and they draft the guard, sure, bring him in for competition. He could absolutely beat out John Feliciano. He's not, he's a good player, but he's very upgradable. And I think that, this offensive line is being built very well, because you got the left tackle, you got the center, you got the right tackle. The 2 guards can kind of be helped out by the guys around them. And who knows? I mean, this draft is stacked with offensive linemen.
That's a huge fact in terms of Feliciano. I like Feliciano. Don't get me wrong. I do like him, but we're trying to improve any which way we can, tweak the roster any which way we can to be just this much better to compete with whoever we play again in the AFC Championship game, which I think, we got a long way to go to get there. But when I look at the AFC, stylistically, I just don't see how the Bills aren't back in that game.
Yeah.
I just don't. It's just my take on that. But the moves that we see with the 1 year deal of Forrest Lamp and the structure of how they structured John Feliciano's contract and even Matt Milano's contract, it's almost as if they're planning ahead a little bit. With Milano, it's, hey, we're signing him to a essentially 2 year deal that when that's over, it'll be time to extend Tremaine Edmonds.
Yep.
The way that Brandon Beane has just been this salary cap wizard, as they call him on Twitter, is rightfully so. I think that's why the Bills are kind of set up years ahead of time for success. And a move that I got to get your take on, because this was one that I remember thinking when I saw this, and I knew that I was going to have you on the show again. The notification comes on my phone. I'm actually in the middle of doing stuff for my day job, and I look at it, and it says Buffalo Bills sign Mitch Trubisky, the new addition, the new QB2 of Buffalo Bills. And I laughed at first. I'm not going to lie, I laughed. I thought, what? I didn't see that coming. I didn't. Nothing out there. No Ryan Talbot tweets. No beat writers were saying that Mitchell Trubisky was coming here. A 1 year deal for $2.5 million, and I laughed at it for a second, and then I thought, wait a minute, that's actually a good move. Like, we just improved our quarterback position, and if Allen goes down, Mitch Trubisky steps in. And what are your thoughts of Mitch Trubisky being the new QB2 of the Buffalo Bills?
That was probably the very last move that I would have expected this entire offseason. The former number one or first round draft pick, the hype of Chicago. Now he's the backup quarterback for Josh Allen. And it's interesting because, I think it's a great move for both sides. I think, he comes in on a cheap deal. Remember this. Jacoby Brissett signed with the Miami Dolphins. He's going to have a $5 million cap hit as a backup quarterback for Miami. I mean, getting Mitch Trubisky for $2.5 million, a guy that can step in, God forbid if Josh Allen goes down, and still win games, that's a great deal. I mean, he has talent. It hasn't always been on a silver platter for him, but he has talent. He can win games. He's shown it. He can put up points. That's all you need. And I think it's a great deal for both sides. The Bills are doing something nice. They're saying, hey, we're going to bring you in. We're going to help you out. We're going to have you train under a MVP candidate. And who knows? I tweeted it out as soon as the deal was kind of done. I said, training camp always rolls around. There's always injuries around training camp. Who knows? Maybe a team says, uh-oh, our quarterback's down. He's out 5 weeks. What do? We got to look around the league. Who are we going to trade for? Oh, wait. Buffalo has a starting quarterback as the number 2 cornerback. And then Brandon Beane flips him for a 4th round pick. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'd like to see them roll out the season with Mitch Trubisky, but it's interesting to think about.
I said the exact same thing to Bruce Exclusive. The Bruce Exclusive, the Wizard of Oz voice of the Bills Mafia. Yeah. We don't know what he looks like. We know that he's got an awesome voice, but I had him on the show, and I said, hey, look, I mean, worst case scenario is still a pretty damn good scenario. He's 29 and 21 as a starter. He has never played on a team even remotely as talented as this Bills team. All the Chicago teams that he was on were terrible. And I'm not saying that he wasn't terrible in his own right sometimes, but, like you said, it wasn't exactly handed on a silver platter for him to succeed. Yep. And I think that, man, I mean, that could be the difference between having home field advantage in the playoffs or not, or winning a division or being in the running for the division or not. So I really like that move. And it was crazy. I've never looked at a move like that, laughed, and thought, oh, my God, that's terrible. And then a minute later, I'm like,
wait a second.
It's actually not. It's actually a good move.
It's a big upgrade over Matt Barkley, too. I mean, think back a couple of years ago when Josh Allen went down against the Patriots. We were going into that next game against Tennessee, and we were like, oh, my gosh, we're going to have Matt Barkley in here.
Right.
Think about that now. I mean, it's still a little scary, no Josh Allen, but Mr. Trubisky, okay, he's got an arm. He can move in the pocket. He's capable, and he's more capable than Matt Barkley was.
I would say that, Josh Allen could be the Labatt Blue. Mitch Trubisky could be the Labatt Blue Light. It's not as good as the real thing, but it's still pretty good. Yes. And every Western New Yorker knows what I'm talking about there. So yeah, I'm really happy about that move. And we touched on moves that they can make towards the defensive side of the ball, who are some of the guys on this defense currently that you expect to take like that next big step? Because last year there were some weeks where their defense was they just looked just discombobulated. They didn't look like the Sean McDermott defense of old. Who are some guys that you're somewhat zeroing in on and saying, hey, these guys need to step it up a little bit?
Yeah, and I think the easy choice is Ed Oliver. Ever since the Bills drafted him at 9, it was always, this guy's going to be the next Aaron Donald, and he's been a nice piece. He really has. I'm a big believer in him, maybe more so than somebody else might be. But you can say him. I really like the idea of Tremaine Edmonds just coming out and saying, "This is my team." This guy is so young. I mean, people forget this. He was drafted as a teenager to say, come into the NFL, be the quarterback of a defense, and have all this pressure on you. And, I know people don't like to wait. I know people want the draft picks to come in right away and be the next greatest linebacker. But it takes time. I mean, linebacker is one of the most important and one of the toughest positions to learn and play. He has to control all the other guys on the line, all the other guys behind him, and say, this is my defense. Yeah, he is the Josh Allen of the defense, and Matt Milano might be a better linebacker, but Tremaine Edmonds, I think this year, we say it every year, this year is the year. I know people hate that saying, but I think it really could be, because they're going to help out that secondary, which is going to help out the linebackers, which is going to help out the defensive line, and I think he's due for a huge year. He was playing a little hurt last year. I know a lot of people were really down on him, but he is a freak athlete, and it's only getting better from here. And I hope that AJ Epinesa might prove us all and maybe take the league by storm a little bit here, because he was that same kind of thing. He was the freak athlete coming out. They get him in the second round. His combine wasn't great, but I liked what I saw from him. And I think with a little more help maybe on the defensive line around him, he could have a big year too. So this defense, they're poised to take another step, I think.
As far as Edmonds, I actually talked with Lorenzo Alexander about Tremaine Edmonds when he was on my show, and it was fascinating because Lorenzo Alexander, another pro's pro, a guy that's been in every which situation that you could dream of and then some as an NFL player, and he said when Tremaine Edmonds, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it was something to the tune of, when Tremaine Edmonds first was brought onto the team, it was just sheer athleticism that he could get by with that sheer athleticism. Then when the other teams, the other opposing offenses start to figure out that he's just using that sheer athleticism, it turns into, okay, well, I got to adapt my game. And Tremaine Edmonds being in charge, as you said, of the defense, playing a style of football that he'd never played before, being this full-time team leader. I don't think people realize when he was at Virginia Tech, he might have lined up at middle linebacker, but you had a solid base style defense where in Buffalo, you're asking the secondary to step up a little bit more than the average defense. You're asking the defensive line to step up a little bit more. And let's face it, it's the NFL. The speed of the game from college to the National Football League is I mean, I'm watching it now on tape with some of these quarterbacks, and I think, can these guys translate just to the speed of the game in and of itself? And I feel like Tremaine Edmonds is set. I am confident in saying this. As long as he stays healthy, I think this could be his best year yet. I really do. I liked what I saw towards the end of last season, and that was really when he was healthy towards the end of last year. So, pump the brakes, Bills Mafia, on the criticism of Tremaine Edmonds. I think that the sky's the limit for him, and it is somewhat a little bit of a pressure year. You talked about AJ Epinesa. It was a little bit non-existent out there. It didn't really get the snap count that you would hope to see from a second rounder. But now with Trent Murphy gone and some of these other people gone, I hope to see him get a chance. What do you say? This is my guy as far as a player that I think the pressure is really on. And this is a position that I'm going to be putting some binoculars on training camp time if we're allowed to attend, which would be nice. Dawson Knox, the tight end position. You bring in Jacob Hollister, another new addition. Dawson Knox, what say you about the pressure that he is under?
Tight end's another one of those positions. It's slow developing. Every once in a while you'll get a guy like George Kittle that comes out and right away he's the guy. But tight end's a tough position. It is a tough position to develop. It's a tough position to really come to your own and be a dominant force. I'm not giving up on Dawson Knox. The drops, that's something that's, you got to keep an eye on, because you can develop blocking, you can develop route running. Drops are something else. It's kind of the same thing as accuracy in a quarterback. It's tough to teach, but it is teachable. I mean, if you work on it, you can fix anything. So
right.
I like Dawson Knox. I think, Josh Allen loves playing with him. He's got the trust. That's really a huge thing that people forget about is, I think that's why they brought in a guy like Jacob Hollister, whether they wanted to bring in somebody like Zach Ertz. You bring in Jacob Hollister, Josh Allen's best friend from college. That's a big, big thing to remember. I mean, they got the trust. They know each other's cues. They know what they're going to do. It's big. And I think, the addition of Jacob Hollister is good, because last year, Tyler Kroft was inactive a lot. Behind Dawson Knox, it was Lee Smith, and there was a lot of pressure on Dawson Knox to be the guy. There was a lot of pressure on him to be the number one tight end and say, this is all on you, kid. And that's a lot of pressure. And, people might say, oh, they're in the NFL. Okay, but still, it's not easy. So I think I'm not giving up on Dawson Knox. I would not be totally surprised if they draft somebody, if it's right. I don't think they're going to reach at all, because I don't know if they really want to bring in another developmental piece. But if somebody's sitting there that they love and they really think can come in right away, I think they absolutely will draft a tight end.
You have a lot of Bill's Twitter. I'm not trying to rip Bill's Twitter a new one on this show. That's the last thing I want to do, obviously. But we're sitting here. It's April 7th. We know the lay of the land as far as like the draft rankings and such. We have some Bills fans out there that feel like we could trade into the top 5 and go get Kyle Pitts, and that's not going to happen.
I saw a lot of people tweeting as soon as there's an update about the Falcons trading out of 4. I saw a lot of people saying, Brandon Beane, where are you? Please, Brandon Beane, if you're watching this, do not trade up to number 4. As fun as Kyle Pitts would be on this offense, I do not want to leverage the entire future of the franchise just for one player.
Former Bills center Eric Wood, he likes my take on building up the offensive line. He's like, keep talking about that. Keep talking. Because obviously the offensive line, they never get talked about enough. And you touched on it in terms of, looking at just the entirety of that front. I really liked what Deion Dawkins brought. I loved the fact that they were able to bring back Darrell Williams. We talked about Forrest Lamp, but the one thing that kind of worries me about this offensive line of the Bills is last year, and we touched on the run game. This line, it looks like they're a pass blocking line only. Like some of the guys can do a little bit of both, but then when it comes to the run blocking, they look just so discombobulated in terms of the communication. Do you think that the lack of offseason played a factor in that, or do you think they just didn't have the right mix in terms of run blockers?
It's tough to gauge because, like you said, I mean, we didn't have a full offseason, but a lot of these guys were injured throughout the year. I mean, Feliciano missed the first start of the year. When he came back, Cody Ford went down. So these guys really have not been able to play together. And kind of the same thing that I said with Josh Allen and the continuity, it might be even more prevalent on the offensive line. I mean, these guys are looking forward, saying, I need to block this guy, and I need to trust the guy to my right, the guy to my left, to know what they're going to do. So offensive line is tough because not only do you have to worry about your own assignment, you need to worry about 4 other guys, what they're going to do and know what they're going to do. So I love the idea of drafting offensive line at 30. I really do. I mean, a lot of people might say it's a wasted pick, but if you can find a guard to come in right away and maybe take Feliciano's spot or battle Cody Ford, that's great. I mean, this team is always looking to upgrade. And like I said, it's tough to gauge because these guys haven't all played together. I think it might be different when they all play together and when they're all healthy.
Brandon Beane said something at the end of season press conference that made me go, what? That was like the first time, but he said something to the tune of, we believe that Cody Ford is the 3rd best offensive lineman on this team.
Yep.
And I hope he's right. He's been right a lot. He's been far more right than he's been wrong. That's why the Bills are where they are at, and God bless him for it. But we just haven't seen it yet. And that's the thing. He's a former second-round draft choice. I would say, as far as a player that's under pressure, I think maybe more than anybody could be Cody Ford. What do you think of that?
Yeah, because I mean, remember they traded up for Cody Ford too. They
Right.
wanted him. They wanted their guy. They got their guy, and they're very happy they did. Might not have panned out exactly how they wanted to, but remember they've been kind of tossing him around. They had him at guard, they had him at tackle, they had him back at guard. I think with a full offseason, hopefully crossing our fingers, he's going to be fully healthy. Stick him in that right guard spot. Have him next to one of the best pass blockers in the league, and Mitch Morse and Darrell Williams, who really played well last year. It's going to help him. And I know people don't like to hear about development and waiting for these guys to come around, but it's true. I mean, not every player is going to come in right away and light it up. Look at Josh Allen for the perfect example. I mean, it takes time for these guys. And Cody Ford, he's got the talent, he's got the size, he's got everything. He's just got to put it together. And if any year is going to be the year, it's going to be this year.
I like that take. I like that take a lot. We got a lot to discuss. We've discussed a lot already. More to come for the folks tuning in on YouTube and Facebook. I appreciate you. For the folks that will be listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, greatly appreciate the support. Want to ask you, shifting gears here from the Bills to an AFC East rival, I call them the New Jersey Jets. There's only one NFL team in New York. We know who that is, Buffalo Bills. But the New York Jets, that's what they call them. I don't, it is what it is. But the New York Jets, they decided to part ways with a player that they invested heavily in 2018, and Sam Darnold. They sent him packing. He goes to the Carolina Panthers. They get a 6th in this year's draft, a 2nd in 2022, and a 4th in 2022. Kurt, I want to get your immediate reaction. What was your immediate reaction to the Jets moving on finally from Sam Darnold?
Immediate reaction was, wow. I really did not think the Jets would get that much for him. I thought, if they're lucky, you get a 4th round this year and maybe a 6th round next year. I didn't think they'd be able to get 3 picks, especially a 2nd round pick.
Right.
I think it's good though. You can argue that they wasted the pick because they traded up for Darnold back in 2018, but it had to happen. The Jets get their new head coach. He wants to bring in his own guy. They're in a perfect spot. They got the number 2 pick, and I like the move a lot for Carolina. Sam Darnold's 23. He's 23 years old. I mean, Joe Burrow is older, I think, than Sam Darnold. So again, development. It takes some time, and Sam Darnold has not had the most help around him. I don't really love the help that he has around him in Carolina. I'm thinking that maybe Carolina goes wide receiver in the 1st round. But, Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, if they had Curtis Samuel, that'd be a huge help. But I like the move for both sides. Maybe Carolina gave up a little bit too much, but maybe they didn't. Maybe Sam Darnold just lights it up and he comes out with his hair on fire. I don't think he'll do that yet. I think Carolina is a few years away before they can start doing that and before Sam Darnold can do that. But, you look at the team, the Jets are rebuilding. They get their head coach. Finally, Adam Gase is out of there. As a Bills guy, I would have loved him to stick around for 10 more years. As an NFL guy, it's the right move. Robert Saleh is a great head coach. He's going to get his guy at 2. And I'm happy for Sam Darnold. Restart, just get out of that toxic organization.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The first thought, whenever a trade goes down, and it's the NFL geek in me, the trade geek in me, draft geek in me, I see 3 picks. I mean, for a guy that was a turnover machine, regardless of the circumstances, he was a turnover machine. That did shock me, but it made me think to myself, okay, if the Panthers are trading 3 picks for Sam Darnold, they must believe in him. Matt Rule must see something in him that nobody else is seeing.
And remember, they're sitting at 8 too. So that means that either they don't trust Trey Lance, or they know that they're not going to have a shot to get Trey Lance, because at this point, Atlanta's sitting at 4, and there is probably a 0.001% chance that the Atlanta Falcons are going to trade with their division rival for the 4th overall pick. So Carolina says, you know what? We're not going to get one of these young guys. We don't want to take a risk and hope that maybe a guy like Trey Lance falls. We're going to go get our guy. And I like that move. And maybe they're going to get something for Teddy Bridgewater. We don't know. But it's a smart move. And I think Carolina's building in the right way. I like what that team's doing.
I think that the supporting cast, while not as good as you'd like it to be, you still got Christian McCaffrey on that team. And there isn't a player with 1/10 the talent on the Jets of Christian McCaffrey. So if Christian McCaffrey was like 1/10 of his talent level, he'd still be better than any of the players in the Jets. So
you're not wrong.
That's just my opinion on that. But I feel that it's bittersweet because I know that Sam Darnold and Josh Allen are friends. That whole thing was pretty cool, seeing how that rivalry would kind of play itself out. But we do play the Panthers this year. So hopefully we still see that. But the next question is, now that Darnold is out, what quarterback will the Bills have to game plan for potentially that the Jets are definitely taking it to? Who do you see going to the Jets with that second pick?
I just saw it today, and I was a little surprised by your tweet, but it's got to be Zach Wilson. I would be absolutely shocked. I would be absolutely shocked if it's anybody but Zach Wilson. I'm a big believer. I love Justin Fields in this draft, but I think he's going to be a perfect fit and a perfect match in San Francisco. I think that, the way that this team has kind of watched and studied Zach Wilson, I would really be shocked if they didn't go with him. And I'd like to hear your side of the story for this Zach Wilson slander. So you really, I haven't really seen too much slander for this guy. I'm a big guy of, everybody anoints Zach Wilson as the next Patrick Mahomes. Pump the brakes, slow your roll, because he'll be lucky if he can come in and be a guy like Kyler Murray. I mean, Zach Wilson is very talented. He's very talented. It takes a lot to be a Patrick Mahomes. People need to slow down.
It takes a lot in terms of just genetically. Not even football, anything. Just genetically, as a human being. And my thing is, I put out my top 5 today, and that's what Kurt is alluding to for the audience members out there, whether you're tuning in, watching, or listening. Top 5 quarterback ranking is always something that I spend a ton of time on it. This isn't something that I just put out just for, clickbait, like some, people out there that do the clickbait thing. That's not me. I've never been a clickbait guy, but I put it out over a period of weeks of just researching these quarterbacks, watching the tape, watching the good things, watching the bad things. And to me, there are certain facets of a quarterback that I look at that make me want that player more than the next guy, even if that next guy might be able to throw the ball a little bit better or something. If there's some facet to his game, I want the guy that's big and I want the guy that can move. Yes. And that's Josh Allen, essentially. That's why I wanted Buffalo to go out and get Josh Allen. He's a big guy, he's strong, he can move, he can take the hits. And I'm not saying that Zach Wilson is ranked 5th because he's small or because he isn't as big or can't weather the storm. It's more about the whole facet of him being a Brigham Young quarterback and not really playing that elite level competition. And I fear for Zach Wilson. It's more that the top 5 to me is more not the ranking of the quarterback going into the draft. It's the ranking for me, the top 5 guys that I think will best fit the National Football League. And I question whether Zach Wilson can be that week 1 rookie that can come in and really take the game over. And even, a guy like Trey Lance, I use the whole school analogy, the competition level and all that stuff. You could say the same thing about Trey Lance, but with Trey Lance, this guy's a massive quarterback. He's 6'5", 250 pounds, ran for over 1,000 yards. Yep. I mean, there's a lot of Cam Newton, Josh Allen, Carson Wentz in his game that Zach Wilson just doesn't have. And
I think something to remember too is, if New York's going to draft Zach Wilson, that's awesome. You need to help him. You need to help him because he comes in right now. He's going to be in the same position that Sam Darnold was in. Wilson's got a big arm. He's got an absolute cannon. He's mobile. He can run. That's what you need in the NFL. That's what this NFL is turning to, the dynamic mobile quarterback that's got the big arm, blah, blah, blah. You need to help your quarterback. I don't care if you have Patrick Mahomes. I don't care if you have Russell Wilson. You need to help your quarterback and give him the talent. I mean, yeah, they signed Corey Davis. Okay, Corey Davis was good, but he was good because they had Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown across from him. So the Jets are, they got the number 2 pick. That's awesome. You need to do a lot more if you want Zach Wilson to come in and light the world on fire.
Yeah, and I just think that, if I'm them, if I'm a team looking at a quarterback in general, I want a guy that I can say to myself, not even year one, I don't want to put my quarterback in the position to play. If I can avoid it, there's exceptions. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence is going to play. He's going to play week 1. But if I can avoid a circumstance where he plays, I'm going to do it. And I think if Zach Wilson goes to the Jets, I don't see it as a good fit. I don't see him as a quarterback that is that week 1 guy. And I do think that he does have talent. He can throw on the run, but unlike Mahomes and unlike Russell Wilson, I see areas where he forces throws that are completions, and let's just say he's playing against, I don't know, TCU or somebody. Where if he's playing against the Baltimore Ravens, if he's playing against the Pittsburgh Steelers,
with that secondary,
you're not making those throws. You're just not. And Josh Allen was able to adapt his game, whereas I don't know how much ability Zach Wilson has to adapt his game.
Yeah.
I like his game. I just don't know. I see more potential to progress from Trey Lance to Mac Jones, Justin Fields. I think if he goes to the right team, he could be really dangerous.
That's why I think San Francisco is the perfect fit for him, because San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan, it seems like that team is just they're a quick team. They got the quick wide receivers. They don't really have the big wide receivers. And then they have George Kittle, who's a great running tight end who can he's a downfield threat. You add Justin Fields in there, he can run, he can throw, he can do everything. He's got the big arm. There's some flaws, but every quarterback, every prospect has flaws.
Right.
I think that's a perfect fit. And you just can't convince me. Nobody can convince me that the 49ers traded up that much just to draft Mac Jones. You just can't pass up on, even if they go Trey Lance. I would not be totally surprised if they want to take a risk on that and maybe keep Jimmy G around to mentor or something. But you can't convince me it was Mac Jones. I will laugh hysterically if they draft Mac Jones with the number 3 overall pick.
I said the exact same thing earlier today. I put the post out there, and I also did a show on it. And, Trey Lance is the type of guy that you could sit for a year or two, and the guy that comes out of the lab in year 3 could be a superstar. You got to remember, though,
you got to remember Trey Lance sat for a full year. So do you want him coming in and sitting behind somebody and having 2 full years of no full football games? I mean, it's tough, but it could work out. We'll never know.
Yeah. I think that this class, though, I do think it's a better class than what it's given credit for. It's just one of those classes that you don't see the established, Darnold at USC. I'll even throw this out there. I can't believe I'm saying it, but Rosen at UCLA. You don't have those quarterbacks that played at those top colleges, that played against and that doesn't really matter necessarily in today's day and age as much as it used to, I don't think. But I'm looking at the New York Jets saying 2nd overall, you're going to trade Darnold for a guy that I just don't know if he's going to be in the best position to succeed. I look at it as a similar situation.
Yeah, and I was when the draft talks first kind of started coming around, I was a big believer of saying the Jets should stick with Sam Darnold. You got the new head coach. You have a capable head coach, not the moron of Adam Gase that was there. Keep Sam Darnold, trade that number 2 pick for a boatload of picks, and build from there. Obviously now that's not going to happen. We'll see 5 years down the road if it was worth it. But the Jets have, I forget the number, but they have a crazy amount of draft picks in these next 2 years, and that's great. You can build up all the draft picks you want. You need to hit on those draft picks if you want to be good.
And the Jets, I mean, ideally, you have to hit on, I think it was Bill Polian that said if you can draft 3 starters out of 7 picks, if you just go into a draft with 7 picks and you get 3 starters, that's pretty damn good. But the Jets have like 14 draft picks or something crazy. They better hit on a lot of them. They better hit on, if not all of them. They need to hit on all of them. That's how bad they are. I mean, let's be honest. So, I think that if you're a smart team out there, though, like Atlanta, like you look at some situations where a quarterback could fit. Atlanta at 4, they're talking about trading out of that pick, but do you get that heir apparent to Matt Ryan? Or if you're Detroit, how high are you on Jared Goff? Or did you just trade Matt Stafford for those first 2 picks and Goff was just a throw in?
It's tough though, because if you traded for Jared Goff, it's hard to see him sitting on the bench with that contract. I mean, it would make sense for Atlanta to go quarterback, but they're sitting at 4. Matt Ryan still got a few years left. Go for it. Get Kyle Pitts. Have a crazy offense. Have Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Kyle Pitts. I still like Matt Ryan. I mean, he's an MVP quarterback. He's a capable quarterback. He's not gonna, he's not gonna throw for 5,000 yards, but he's a good quarterback, and he'll win games. If they could fix that defense a little bit, they could be a wild card team. And then once Brady retires in 20 years, maybe we'll see the Atlanta Falcons rise again. But it's interesting. I mean, we're 22 days away from the draft, and I am counting down the minutes, my friend.
I'm counting down the minutes too. I think that we're on the same page. No running back in the first round. For the love of God, please do not do it. Corner, safety, any position but running back. Quarterback and kicker.
I don't know. I might make an argument. No wide receivers. This is a stacked wide receiver class, but they're pretty well set. But I wouldn't be totally against going linebacker, honestly. We saw them in the playoffs do a lot of 2 linebacker sets, but I think that's just because AJ Klein was so bad. He had the Seattle game where everybody just praised him. He played great. He won Player of the Week. If you get a guy at 30, one of the top linebackers, I don't know, Zaven Collins, if Court Moore is still there somehow, please. But I wouldn't be totally surprised. I think it's going to be offensive line, cornerback, edge, and then maybe linebacker in there.
There's always a guy that falls. There's always a couple guys that fall. So, and usually that's a guy that the Bills end up getting, the Epinezas, go back to Willis McGahee, post that knee injury. Ed Oliver fell. Yeah. So, I'm excited, man. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, Kurt, for joining me on the show today. Once this whole draft thing is over, you're going to come back on the show. Your invitation, I'm sending it to you now, live on the air. And I look forward to chatting with you again, buddy.
I appreciate you having me on. I'm hoping I'm still waiting on I sent in an application, so hopefully it might be working the draft this year. So maybe we could do a live show from Cleveland. We'll see. But cool. Definitely I would love to come on the show again whenever you need me.
That'd be awesome. I usually draft weekend, I do like a radio row where it's like 3 hours long. I have like 15 guests, so your name is on it for sure. So thanks for joining me, and shout out to Kurt. You got to enjoy March Madness like you're in the action in Indianapolis. I'm jealous. I'm not gonna lie.
It was quite the trip. I was working with the Indianapolis Sports Corp, kind of doing a little bit of everything. I worked the practice courts, kind of seeing all the players. I was able to be in the stadium. And by the way, have you ever been to Lucas Oil Stadium?
I haven't been to it, no, but I've heard good things.
It is incredible. I don't think I've ever been in a stadium that big. And I was in Tampa for the Super Bowl in February, and Lucas Oil blows it out because it is huge. And I mean, to have a basketball court, it just looks so small. I can't imagine watching a football game there. But no, it was awesome. It was a fun tournament. Never been involved with March Madness, so I'm glad I was able to. Next year, I think they're coming to Buffalo. I think one of the first couple rounds are in Buffalo.
Yeah,
so
I did hear that as well.
Yeah, so we'll have some fun next year. Hopefully, we'll have some normalcy next year too.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. It's cool that you got to check out the house that Peyton Manning built.
Yes,
it's pretty awesome.
They still love him there. They still praise him. He's like a god there.
Oh my God! Of course he is. Why wouldn't he be? That guy's a legend. Yeah. So Kurt, thank you for joining me on the show. Check out Kurt on Buffalo Rumblings, Talk Prime Time, the Laces Out podcast. Check them out. at Kurt Haumesser. Thanks for joining me, buddy. I really appreciate your time.
I appreciate you having me on, my friend. Go Bills.
Go Bills. Take care.
See ya.
That was Kurt Haumesser. Thank you so much, Kurt, for joining me on the show. Ryan Thomas here, letting you guys know you can subscribe to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram at Ryan Thomas Take, Twitter at Ryan Thomas Take, as well. What else is it on? Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you find your podcasts, I'm out there. I'm available. So thank you so much for tuning in. A ton was discussed between Kurt and myself in regards to the Buffalo Bills, the AFC East, the New York Jets, and of course, the 2021 NFL Draft. I'm very much looking forward to it. It's going to be a great draft. A lot of great guests that I have in the works coming on the show to discuss, each and every team, storyline, scenario, player, you name it. So thank you for tuning in. And last and certainly not least, go Bills.